So we've seen this movie before, and you guys are falling for it like suckers again. All this bullshit about how the Iranian people would like to be bombed and how they would love for America to conduct Israel's war for it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, you're in for something intense today. So we've got a heated exchange where Cenk Uygur is going head to head with people pushing for American military involvement in Iran during the recent protests. On one side, you've got voices saying we need to help the Iranian people through intervention. On the other, Cenk is breaking down why that's the exact same disastrous playbook that led us into Iraq. The tension gets real when he starts calling out who actually benefits from another Middle East conflict, and the responses are absolutely wild. Stick around, because the way this unfolds is going to challenge everything you think you know about foreign policy. And real quick, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far this channel reaches. All right, let's get into it.
Other people were there. You had Iranians across the board there. It was shown live on television, Piers. It was shown on Iranian channels live. You can go, your producers can go back and look at the footage online as it was being shown. You cannot pretend that millions of people were not on the streets in Tehran. You cannot pretend that simultaneously millions of people were not on the streets throughout the country. It's a fact. It was shown live throughout.
I'm not sure, Professor, all due respect, I'm not sure that you and facts are easy bedfellows. But I appreciate
That's
you.
your problem, Piers.
Not really.
You're the one who
actually it may be a problem for you.
You're the one who denied the genocide in Gaza for a year and a half, and you tried to justify the actions of the Israeli regime for a year and a half. And let me be very clear that if the United States, if Trump carries out an attack on Iran, Iranian retaliation will be massive. And people like you,
it was after the strike last summer, you mean?
People like you.
You said this last time.
Like you
said this last time.
Like you will bear responsibility.
But this is the trouble. You're full of crap, aren't you? Because you said this last time. Do you remember? It was all going to happen last time.
Last time, Steve Bannon, the day after the war ended, on his show, said that the reality was that during the last 3-4 days of the war, the Israeli regime was in serious trouble. And they were begging for a ceasefire.
But what happened to the retaliation that you said would happen?
And Trump, because the Israeli regime was begging for a ceasefire. What
happened to your retaliation?
Did you see Tel Aviv? Did you see how we hammered Tel Aviv?
Please, it's embarrassing.
Sure.
It's embarrassing. You come on here all the time and you say it's going to be retaliation is going to be horrific. It's going to be this. It's going to be that, and it doesn't happen. Iran doesn't have the capability to respond in the way that you talk. It's all bluff. It's all bluster. And what it seems to me, Professor, now is the people of Iran have had enough of this bullshit and they're rising up. And as the German Chancellor says, I believe this is the beginning of the end of that regime, and puppets like you that have helped prop it up are going to look very stupid when that day comes. But I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Lies, Piers.
I'll go back to the panel.
Piers, history will remember your lies.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure they'll remember someone's lies, and it won't be me. But thank you.
Remember your lies.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Professor Morandi. Let's go back to the panel. Robert Neal, your reaction to that?
I had a hard time listening to it, I'll be honest, Pierce. I had to mute that guy. I can always tell when I'm listening to someone who, two things, he speaks in front of people who were forced to listen to him, and he's obviously never been punched in the face. I was here listening. I wanted to tear my own arm off so I had something to throw at the screen. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of ratings that guy's going to get you. I'm serious. I don't know what he was talking about. He's a mouthpiece. He looks like the Butcher of Baghdad. I wasn't listening. Can we talk about, you got another question?
Well, I think the interesting thing to me is that he, after the airstrikes in the mountain last summer, he came on and was full of the same bluster about the retaliation's going to be horrific and America will wish it had never done this, Israel wish it had never done it. And it turned out that they chucked a few fireworks at Tel Aviv and that was it. In other words, I don't think Iran has anything like the military capability he and other puppets of that regime like to pretend they do.
No, they absolutely do not. And but again,
Yeah,
as a guy who thinks that we should not have invaded Iraq, and I was excited about it, but I think we shouldn't have. I could see getting excited about it again as a young Navy SEAL, but that's not the case now. And we definitely don't want boots on the ground.
Right.
This again has to come back to the Iranian people, but unfortunately, like your last guess, all we're getting is people screaming at each other.
Yeah.
It'd be not, if you're a regime that's turning off the internet, it's kind of a telltale sign of what's actually going on. And
and they're not doing that. As I said to him, Cenk, they're not turning off the internet because they want to stop the protesters communicating. They're doing it to stop the world watching how they are treating the protesters.
This is exactly why regime propaganda never works in the modern era. Watch what happens when you push someone on actual evidence versus empty threats. When Piers Morgan told him you're full of crap, aren't you? Because you said this last time. That was the moment the entire narrative collapsed. Because here's what people need to understand about propaganda from authoritarian governments. They rely on fear and intimidation, but the second you call their bluff, the whole thing falls apart. And Rob O'Neill absolutely destroyed this. When he said the guy's obviously never been punched in the face, he wasn't just being dismissive. He was pointing out something critical. People who operate in propaganda bubbles have never faced real accountability. They've never had someone actually challenge them with consequences. That's why regimes shut down the internet. Not to stop protesters from organizing, but to stop the world from seeing what they're doing to their own people. Here's the part that matters. When Piers said, "I don't think Iran has anything like the military capability he and other puppets of that regime like to pretend they do," he was exposing the core strategy. Authoritarian regimes survive on projected strength. They need you to believe they're powerful, so you never test them. But when you actually look at what happened after those strikes last summer, what did Iran do? Basically nothing. All that bluster about massive retaliation turned into a few symbolic gestures because they can't actually back up their threats.
Yeah. So look, the idea that the regime are good guys is absurd. So there's been Iranian propaganda here, there's been Israeli propaganda, but what I care about is the American people. And the propaganda I'm sick of is pro-war propaganda. So we've seen this movie before, and you guys are falling for it like suckers again. All this bullshit about how the Iranian people would like to be bombed and how they would love for America to conduct Israel's war for it. And we should do regime change, and it'll be easy. We'll be greeted as liberators. It'll be cheap. We won't have to put troops on the ground. Bullshit. You can't run a country from afar. At some point, you're going to have to put troops on the ground. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to get harmed. And when they get harmed, then they're going to come back on TV and say, I can't believe the Iranians did this. I can't believe the Venezuelans did this. We're going to have to hit them more. And then they're going to put in more ground troops. It never, ever works. So if you believe Piers and everyone else that these riots, these protests are legitimate and have nearly toppled the regime, that's wonderful. I don't like this regime. Let them keep going. But the minute you bomb them, first of all, they're going to lose all credibility on the ground. The protesters are. The regime is going to love that action. They're going to use that to rally the Iranian people to their side. It is going to be deeply counterproductive. And then if it is somehow successful in toppling the Ayatollah, I guarantee you Israel and America are going to insist that Iran be run by a different dictator. They can call him Shah, they can call him king, it doesn't matter. That brother's a dictator. And we tried it before literally with a different Shah, with his dad. And when we tried that, it was so bad, it was so oppressive that it led to an Islamic revolution, which we've had to deal with this whole time. Every time we interfere with Iran, it creates massive blowback, and then the American people have to pay the price in blood and treasure. I've already seen this disastrous movie in Iraq. I do not want to repeat it, and I'm seeing the same exact bullshit propaganda supporting this war of regime change. And yes, it's obviously on behalf of Israel. Who are we kidding? Look at the Israelis frothing at the mouth. We've seen them for 20 years go, you have to invade Iran on our behalf. You have to invade Iran on our behalf. Okay, well, why doesn't Israel do it? And by the way, look at all this bullshit about how, the Iranians are, the regime is bad guys. Of course they are, but so was Saddam. That didn't mean we should go into Iraq. So Kim Jong-un's a terrible leader, abuses his people so badly in North Korea. How come there's no propaganda against him? Because Israel it doesn't have North Korea within Greater Israel. So since it's not related to Israel, there's no talk of the terrible leader of North Korea. How about you guys are worried about state-sponsored terrorism? Israel is a terrorist state. So they killed 2,000 in Iran, these protesters, and I hate that the regime did that. Israel killed 70,000 Palestinians. They occupy 5.5 million of them, and they say they're never going to free them. So why are we helping a terrorist state start another disastrous war in Iraq that we're...
Right here. This is where Cenk Uygur breaks down exactly what's happening. When he said we've seen this movie before and you guys are falling for it like suckers, he was talking about Iraq. And if you don't understand why that comparison matters, you need to pay attention, because this is identical propaganda, the exact same playbook. They tell you it'll be easy. They tell you we'll be greeted as liberators. They tell you we won't need boots on the ground. And then what actually happens? Cenk laid it out perfectly. You can't run a country from afar. At some point, you're going to have to put troops on the ground. And when those troops get harmed, suddenly the mission changes. Suddenly we need more intervention, more money, more lives. It's mission creep, and we've watched it happen over and over. Here's what should terrify everyone. When Cenk said, "I guarantee you America are going to insist that Iran be run by a different dictator," he's talking about historical pattern recognition. Look at what we did with the Shah in the 1950s. We overthrew their democratically elected government and installed a puppet dictator because it served Western interests. And you know what that led to? The Islamic Revolution in 1979. The exact regime we're dealing with now exists because of American interference. Every time we interfere with Iran, it creates massive blowback was not hyperbole, it was documented history.
We're going to have, in Iran in this case, that we're going to have to pay for.
Okay.
And if people don't know this, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. They're walking you into another disaster, and I guarantee it. And it'll be for Israel again, and then they'll pretend that it wasn't, and they'll call everyone an anti-Semite. This, America, listen to me. This isn't our war. I hope the protesters win, but do not let these people sucker you into another multi-trillion-dollar war on behalf of Israel.
Okay. Chuck Todd, your response.
Well, I actually don't think that, I mean, I sort of, you know, sometimes we all debate the extreme potential ideas when I don't think that's what's happening here. I think, look, as much as I am concerned that President Trump has got the YOLO virus, meaning he's more likely to do things that might not, that are politically unpopular because he wants to do it. He wants to legacy build or whatever it is, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's overthrowing the Cuban regime, Greenland, etc. Look, I think any sort of military assistance here will come up is more likely to backfire than not, right? That is what history has taught us. At the same time, finding a way to support these protesters is something that we should be leaning into. We're the United States of America. When people want freedom and democracy, if we're not standing by them, who is, right? That doesn't mean you do it with tanks. It doesn't mean you do it with bombs. And by the way, it's not just Israel that wants this Iranian regime gone. You know who the #1 supplier of drones is to the Russians to kill innocent Ukrainians? It's Iran. You know who else would like to see Iran gone? Pretty much the entire Gulf Peninsula, that regime gone. So this, in fairness, this is not about Israel.
So what?
Not everything is about Israel. When it comes to the Middle East, there's certainly, protecting Israel has been a priority of this country for a long time. I understand that. But in this case, this is about
Come on, Chuck.
the Iranian
Who are you
regime.
kidding,
Of course,
Chuck?
I'm not going to die. But the Iranian regime here is been a bad actor to a lot of people, not just the state of Israel.
Yeah. Goldie, let me bring you in here. You were born in Iran. Do you feel this is different to previous uprisings?
Yes, absolutely. This is different. This time around, the stars have aligned, Piers. So this isn't the first time that we have tried to overthrow the Islamic dictatorship. We've been trying for the last 47 years, in fact. But this time, we have a leader. We have His Royal Highness King Reza Pahlavi.
The scale issue is massive, and people are not talking about this enough. When Cenk said Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq, he wasn't just throwing out a random fact. Iraq had a population of about 25 million when we invaded. Iran has 88 million people. Iraq is roughly 168,000 square miles. Iran is 636,000 square miles. You're talking about a country with vastly more resources, more people, more territory, and a much more developed infrastructure. Anyone telling you this would be quick or easy is either lying or dangerously ignorant. And then Cenk delivered the line that should end this entire conversation. Do not let these people sucker you into another multi-trillion-dollar war. Because that's what this is about. Money, resources, decades of commitment. And for what? So we can repeat the exact same mistakes we made in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, and Syria. But here's what gives me hope. When Chuck Todd came in and said, any sort of military assistance here will more likely backfire than not, you had a mainstream journalist validating the anti-war position. He said that is what history has taught us, and he's absolutely right. You know what actually works? Supporting democratic movements without bombing them, providing resources, communication tools, diplomatic pressure, not missiles. Because the second you start bombing, you turn legitimate protesters into collateral damage, and you give the regime exactly what they need, a foreign enemy to rally against. This isn't about being soft on authoritarian regimes. This is about learning from 2 decades of catastrophic foreign policy failures. We tried this. It didn't work. It cost trillions. It cost lives. And we're watching people try to sell us the exact same product with a different label. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.